Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This week, my guest is Daniel Hodge from ThriveLot. And ThriveLot is a really interesting concept. It's a platform that connects you with service providers to build edible landscapes, which I think is so cool. And our topic this week is we're talking about a free-range childhood, autodidactism, entrepreneurship, and how all of that leads to empowerment. So I really hope you enjoy this interview with Daniel. I'm going to just briefly read some highlights from Daniel's bio. You can read the full bio in the show notes. But Daniel grew up homeschooled with a free-range childhood. And I love that description, free-range childhood. He was obsessed with why humans think the way they do and the cultural, socioeconomic, and political impacts that really underpin our thinking. And he's got a master's in architecture from the University of Tennessee, wasn't really interested in professional titles, but through architecture, he observed the interconnectedness between creative expression of humanity. Daniel's been to Rome. He did his master's thesis in the trajectory of architecture, especially its limitations, moved into software development, designed a game with his brother, an iOS app called Light Traveler. And fast forward to now, Daniel has designed and built over 30 websites and apps, along with a half a dozen architectural installations and projects, including a 30,000 square foot co-working facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. He's founded 3 businesses and helped friends and clients catalyze another 10, which is amazing. So, Daniel, I want to welcome you to the show this week. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I want to start off today. We'll get into everything because there's a lot to talk about, but I want to start off with a little icebreaker fun question just so everybody can get to know you. If there was one song that you would describe as the theme song to your life, what would that song be and why?
That's a great question. Oh my gosh. Wow. Theme song. I don't know. What's one of the songs that's like, that's a tough one. You hit on a music question, which is just like,
I know music always like, I've talked about over the years on the show that music always helped me put into words feelings that I couldn't quite express.
Yes.
And when I was thinking about this before asking you this question, I was like, well, what would my theme song be? Because it's changed over the years. And I think now mine would be Bailando by Enrique Iglesias, because I love dancing. I love how dancing makes me feel. I also love like almost like, as cheesy as it sounds, kind of like dancing through life. You know what I mean? Like just picking up and getting up and going, even when things aren't exactly working like we planned. So I think that would be my theme song.
Gosh, I think that's a great, well, the dancing, kind of the ballet. I mean, part of that is like, gosh, how do I describe, or how do I even get to, like, because I have music that like, I guess moves me. You know, there's like music, I guess, is in so many ways, like you feel like kind of the spirit in things. Like when you play music with other people, you know, you are really kind of just learning to get on the same wavelength and kind of just like kind of ride it together. You don't know, like, kind of give it away, like, you know, the solos and stuff. You just like, all right, now you take it. And I'm trying to, you know, there's a lot of jazz songs that I really like, that are just kind of fun and kind of just, you know, all over the place, which is how I guess I might describe, you know, it is kind of dancing through life. But which would I go with? Let's see, Autumn Breeze would probably be what I would go with. I know that was a long way of getting there.
Who's that by?
Oh gosh, let's see. Who is it originally by? That is by. 1 second, I'll just grab this real quick. Who is it originally? I'm gonna have to go deep back into that. Was in the 1950s, I think, when that one first came out. I want to say it was like George. It'll come to me.
Okay, I've not heard of that one, so I was just curious. So, it's okay. So let's start out today talking about our title. So what is autodidactism, and can you use it in a sentence, pleplease? Admittedly,
Absolutely.
I had to look this word up. I didn't know. I'd never heard this word before. And now I keep seeing it. I see it all over the place. It's so funny.
It's, it was, I feel like it was the same thing for me because it wasn't until I'd already started to realize, I guess, what it was or like what it means, so for me, and I guess the standard definition would be self-taught. But at the same time, it's like, that's only a half truth, because I think it's it's the inspiration that you get to pursue things that you're curious in that really allows you to develop an autodidactic sense, I guess, and to have that courage and confidence that you can pursue things. So maybe, I guess I used it in the sentence there.
Yeah, you did. Well, and that's, that's something that I've done actually in my life with my career. I've worked for 12 years now in consulting, IT consulting primarily. I do not have an IT degree. I've never done any sort of IT training. My undergraduate degree is in agriculture, which couldn't probably be any farther from IT. But what I did do was years ago, I was in a period where I was laid off. I was unemployed, had a lot of free time. You can only look for a job so often, when you're unemployed, or decide what's going to be next. And so I started a website. I started learning how to build the website because I didn't have a job, so I couldn't pay somebody to do it. So I wanted to learn it. Spent a lot of time, if I do this, then this happens, right? If I do this, then that. Anyway, long story short, it led me to a career in IT consulting. And it's amazing what following your interest will lead you to. I think a lot of times we feel like, because I've had friends that have said this, like, oh, I don't have a degree, so I'm not smart enough, or I'm not, I can't do that because I didn't go to school for it. Well, so what? Who cares, right? We both have examples and about learning things that weren't necessarily the formal way, but that doesn't mean it's wrong or that you can't, excel from doing it that way. And I think that's so important to remind people of, and even remember ourselves, because sometimes even I forget it. Like, I'm like, oh, but I don't have to go I can just figure this out on my own.
Absolutely. That kind of courage, that kind of, I guess it's a change in process too, where I feel so much of, schooling is, you're learning things, it's the answers are here, the where you can learn stuff is here, but then it's like kind of this breakout where, one of the most important skills I feel like I ever learned was honestly just how to deal with Google. How to use the right keywords and use the right kind of combinations of things to get what I wanted out of it, instead of just a long list of, how to get the signal and the noise, basically, like the search to find like, what's this is good information, or, this is what I was looking for. That was, I think, a huge step just in one little tool, tools, not rules, I guess, from a principle standpoint. It's like how we can enable, ourselves to learn or to, to, I guess, improve our efficiency in things like, time management is pain management in so many ways. And I can't tell you how many times I've learned that just in the pursuit of things, because it's like you get going really fast, you hit a wall, and then you're just like, wow, and so much of that, though, I feel is also just, again, jumping into being homeschooled. Like, I think the fact that you have somebody that believes in you, that is, even when, you don't understand, is willing to actually take the time and like point you in the right direction. My dad used to do this thing, and it always frustrated me when I was little, and we'd be talking about something, and I would say, I don't know. And he'd say, I don't know is an acceptable answer, which it is. And it really is. Right. But what he was, I think, helping me to, he was inspiring that curiosity. It's like, you're curious in this, right? But you don't know about it, but, seek out the answers and, seek to be open to also the fact that you don't know. Take that as the first step, and then say, all right, what else do I not know?
Right. And also trust that you can find the answers. I think that's one thing growing up, we think about the indoctrination centers that most of us were sent to, right? We were taught to do a certain thing, a certain way, stay in the line. If you get out of the line, you're the bad kid, you're the disruptive kid, whatever it is. And that follows us into adulthood, right? We be a good employee, sit at your desk, be quiet, keep your head down, say yes, what they tell you to do, and a lot of people are finding now that that's not working out so well, right? Because of various things happening in the world. And so a lot of us, I think, and this is, myself included, I went to an indoctrination center as a child, but finding that confidence to believe that, okay, I don't know the answer, but that doesn't mean I can't know the answer, or I don't have the ability to find the answer. Mm-hmm. And one thing I've been saying to myself recently is, as a kind of a reminder or a mantra, that I know the truth. And what that means to me when I say that is it's a reminder of, because I can feel in my body when I have questions about things, like if I'm struggling with something, or if I feel anxiety or fear about something, it's often because I'm trying to go outside of myself to find the answers, right? I'm seeking the answers here and there. And with that comes anxiety, because then it's like, will I find the answer? Will I get the answer? Is this the right answer? Right. And when I ask myself or remind myself, I know the truth. What I'm saying to myself in that is, I know that I trust myself enough that I'm going to get there. I don't have to worry. I don't have to seek. I don't have to be filled with anxiety about being wrong or not having the answer. And I think what you're saying with your dad asking you that, or reminding you that, when you say you don't know, it's building confidence at a young age to be able to be secure enough with yourself to not have to even always have the answer, right? And still be able to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the things that you're after, the things that you're interested in, where I feel that, it's like we have all these, it's like a huge tree, right, of all these different ways our lives could end up, right? And we're kind of channeled and pushed along. I remember one kind of really funny thing that I realized when I got to high school, which is the first time I went into public school, was like the power or the weight of like saying, oh, well, I'm going to be a doctor. And it's like, all of a sudden it's like, he's going to be a doctor, and it's like, well, this is a 15-year-old child,
right?
But that kind of like, influence though, right? Now you're pushing somebody in this direction because, that's, okay, maybe that's what I'm supposed to do here. Maybe that's like who I am. But then at the same time, you're also getting, locked in a bit, your box is starting to shrink in. And then that's like, okay, maybe this is what I'm good at. And then you are unfortunately kind of swerved away from maybe even what you really wanted to go for. And then It's not 15, 20 years later until you're able to come back.
Right. And, who knows at age 15 or 12 or 18, what they want to be. And what I found along the way too, is that the way we're taught also is that changing your mind is somehow wrong, right? Like if you make a decision that, okay, you have to, that's it for you, for your life. Right. And no, we're all free to change and make different decisions and explore different things and try different things. And one of the things when I first started consulting years ago that I still to this day find some of the best advice was get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because there's a lot of discomfort in the world. And if you can navigate still through the discomfort without letting that paralyze you or keep you in that box or keep you feeling like I don't know, so I can't move forward, that to me has been like one of the best pieces of advice that I still remind myself of, that I can still move forward in when I don't know, in the unknown.
Speaking of mantras, one important mantra for me in that regard is growth only happens in discomfort.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that originates at all, but it's something that's really stuck with me and kind of just, pops up in my head every now and then. It's like, okay, what you feel right now is discomfort. The reason that you feel that is because you're going through a transformation, because you're opening up to something that you weren't really, but that in and of itself is, I feel like, takes repetition, to walk into a room, into a meeting or, any kind of situation and trust yourself, that, well, for one, that that you should be here, because I think for so many people, I've struggled with like imposter syndrome as well. It's like, why am I here? How did I get here? It's like, I'm not,
am I to be here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's, but it's like, if we can, I think there's a lot to be said about, operating with humility, but at the same time, like having, that self-confidence, like having that, you can step out into this stage or, wherever it may be and perform, because you put in the time and, why shouldn't you be here? I guess it's
who are you not to? Why wouldn't you be here? And, when you're talking about going through those experiences of I'm growing or I feel discomfort because this is a new experience and I'm changing, that the emotions or almost like the chain reactions of feelings that happen during that are so fast that you can automatically go to the discomfort, I can't do it, discomfort, stop, discomfort, bad, right? But if you take a minute to think, okay, here's what's happening. This is okay. I'm safe. I can do this. I can have this experience. That is how I navigated so much change when I was changing my life. I moved to Nashville. I quit my job, all this different stuff. And I completely changed my life in a short amount of time. I had to keep reminding myself of that. Otherwise, that would have paralyzed me and kept me stuck and small and kept me in that place that I said I didn't want to be in anymore.
Absolutely. Wow.
So let's talk about your free range childhood again. I love that term, but your self-taught, your autodidactism, and how that style of learning influenced your choices, how that, being, again, not growing up in an indoctrination center, you got to choose, it sounds like, what you were learning, whether the rest of us, most of us were, this is what you're going to learn. How do you think that influenced you, and how did that shape who you are today?
So much of that is, I guess, in the setup, and I credit fully both my parents, especially my mom, for really following. She really created a curriculum that was very much in line with, traditional schooling, and but allowed us to pursue at the pace, and kind of, if it was like there's something on a science module, let's say, we could just go and do all that to the end in like a week if we wanted to, right? If that's just like what we became consumed with dinosaurs, right? And so it's like all of a sudden we're out in the woods, with a little paintbrush and something, just excavating things. And so I think same thing for just the speed and the rate at which we're able to go through things. So it's like, our goal was to get up as early as we could so that we could be done by like 9 or 10, and then have the rest of the day to be outside and like make things and do things. And, it just like, it didn't become very apparent to me for a long time, like just a very different experience, and how fortunate I feel that I was in that regard of like not having to wait until the bell, to then have to ride the bus, and then have to, it's like, then you have like how many hours of daylight left, right? And it's rinse and repeat. And became keenly aware of that. And just like, that was a huge, I guess, awakening moment for me, and like the experience of all of us. And like, good grief, what do we do here? We have to do something. What do we do?
Right. And so how do you think that, for the listeners, those obviously are adults now, and we may not have grown up that way, but I do think we still have options to set our life up in ways that we can benefit from. Let's take working from home as an example, right? A lot of people went to that last year. I worked from home for multiple years now. And that was before I worked from home, that was one of my goals. Like that, I wanted to design my life in a way that gave me that flexibility, that freedom. I didn't want to have to commute anymore. I didn't want to have to get up and get ready and do the whole production, of putting, doing all that. To me, it was a waste of time. You think about that, like there was 2 or 3 hours in the day, maybe 4, where I was preparing for going into an office, let's say, right? Wasted time, right? And when you're in the car, you're commuting. Yes, you can listen to things, and yes, you can do that kind of stuff. And I did all that. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to design my life in a different way. And I did. And I think that now, after, what we experienced in 2020, people are more open to that. We've seen it. Some people were forced into it. Maybe they didn't like it, but then maybe grew to love it, or maybe still hated it or whatever. But I do think there's still that element of, like you're talking about designing your days as a child. We still have options to design our days as adults.
Absolutely.
So what do you think about that? Like, what's your
Gosh, I think it's inherent in all of us. There's a great, it's called the Royal Society of the Arts in London. And Ian McGilchrist is a psychiatrist. It's like a knight, I guess, in England now. And he gave this really incredible TED talk that had to do with, like, the fact that a 5-year-old child, across the board, they're basically scoring genius level. It doesn't matter. It's like, unless, some nurture things haven't happened exactly right. Like, we all have this potential, but then it's like, that tunnel vision can start to emerge. And we, I guess, become less and less sure of ourselves to actually step outside of that, right? It's like, if you step off the train now, how hard is the fall going to be when I jump out, to escape. And a really, I guess, compelling and very recent example of that is actually my wife. She has a very different experience than me growing up. She had gone through school, went to college for a little bit, started working. And then, when we got married, about the time we got married, she was really wanting to break out of what she's doing. She wanted to, she's very interested in like antiques and like reclaimed goods, and wanted to start her own thing, trying to, get rid of this kind of everything is for obsolescence mindset, that we have. And, but our conversations and discussions, and where I would recognize that, for a while there was this fear, this kind of anxiety of jumping ship, or just, starting to maybe just add a little calendar block, late in the day, where you could start to read about that, or you could start to, there's some YouTube videos out there, other people that are doing these things. What are the things that you need? Start bite size, and get those little bitty wins. It's like, all of a sudden, right, start it and keep going. And now, she's actually still working, but in school, taking online, just an online course, to develop the certificates and things that she wants to do what she needs. And, but just going through there's always, it's just the little bitty steps that you can start to take to, all of a sudden you're like, wow, look at this. 6 months have passed, and now I have all this ready to go and all this resources built.
Right. You don't have to have it all figured out on day one. Right. Cause I think that's what, like, her experience, it's a mindset shift to break out of the quote norm, what we're programmed to do, go get the job, sit at the office 8 hours a day or more sometimes, and wanting to do different things. It's scary. It can feel like you're, I don't know, like there's many things people could feel that, and I know I've experienced those feelings, but taking one small step, like you're saying, like if you have an interest in something, take a class, explore, watch videos on it, right? And over time, like I was telling you about before we started recording, that I'm moving over to Linux for my operating system. I didn't know anything. I knew a little bit about Linux, like I've worked in IT for a long time, but I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. I mean, I can do minimal, but I theoretically understood it, but I had no idea going in. And so I watched videos, I read chat forums, I did different things like that. And then I bought a cheap laptop, made my, loaded Mint on there for the first time. Okay, this was easy. Moved to a different laptop, right? Moved up. In less than 2 months, now I'm fully operational on a Linux machine. I still have a few things that are not quite right, but this is my main operating system. I knew nothing about it 2 months ago, to the degree that I thought I would be talking to you on a Linux machine. So these things that these roadblocks or these barriers we put up are our own. They're our own stories that we tell ourselves. They're not, and that's what I go back to. That mantra that I repeat to myself is, I know the truth. Yes. Because I know that those barriers aren't true. I know those aren't true. And when I tell myself I know the truth, I feel this relaxation in my body. I feel this letting go of that anxious tension because I'm afraid I can't do something. And continuing to remind myself that I know the truth helps me to take steps like this. Like I'm saying, like what I did with the computer, right? And next I'm going to do the phone, right? I'm going to have 2 phones side by side for a while and work that out, right? So there's so much to be said for taking those small steps. And I think we underestimate how often and how impactful those can be.
Gosh, I think going back to the truth, I mean, you do feel like, you feel that if what you're doing is kind of like, you feel that, maybe it's discomfort, but also there's the anxiousness, right? That's kind of the layer on top of that discomfort, that if you're able to get that away, if you're able to talk yourself through that, or just, get the little bitty win. For me, it's always been about like, just this snowballing effect. Yeah. Of just things that compound, the compound interest of like just spending a little bit more time, Yeah.
One more thing. Yeah. One more thing. And it's amazing to me. I was talking to one of my friends about this because she was struggling with some things, and she was talking about how she was trying to just do one more thing for herself, right? One more. And we were talking about how it's so easy to discredit the one more thing, but that's where the change happens, is just as in the discomfort, the one more, willing to do it one more time or try one more time, or, whatever it might be, is a lot of times where that magic is that is so underestimated.
Oh my gosh. And I feel like we always underestimate like the things that are still with us from our failures, right? Not like, not the failure itself, but the learnings, all of this new perspective that we've gained. And my goodness, like I think of all the times, that I've failed and hit the wall with things and been like, all right, gonna do another project, gonna do another app, and keep going. But each time, right, you're just compounding the interest of kind of the pursuit and the, your knowledge base and perspective that you have.
Yeah. So what would you say one of your biggest lessons from your failures has been?
Oh gosh. Let's see, right after architecture school, came out of the writing my thesis, kind of looking at the trajectory of the profession in terms of like, what is this potential to impact the world? It's increasingly less, right? It's mainly, contractor developer kind of driven. And, it's also, very wealthy, kind of patrons that are able to afford architecture. So it's kind of way over in this little thing. And so I said, you know what? Another thing that I've realized is that a lot of architects don't know how to build, what they're designing. And so set out to start a design build company. And this was my, very first business effort, and, went in headlong into it. Had, all right, we're going to need a website, need business cards, need all these different things. And, ended up just really fizzling out, flew a little too close to the sun with it,
Like what you hear so far? Take what you've learned and invest in yourself with the Create What You Speak Academy. Visit createwhatyouspeak.com to learn more. Now back to the show.
Also knowing who you're going into business with and kind of knowing their, let's say, experience as well. And like what, the value and how an organization, a group of people, I would say if there's one thing, that you really have to temper autodidactism with, would be, I guess you can put yourself on an island sometimes too, right? And that in of itself can be kind of a reinforcing negative feedback loop where, if you don't know the lingo, right, of whatever this thing is, but you're necessarily good at the skill, and you're good at, doing these things, but you don't know the little keywords, the buzzwords that people use in that space. You can feel very, there could be kind of that creeping kind of, it locks you down, right? And so you have to open it up, but you also have to be, I think, real with like where you are in the process. And I was not real with myself, about like my understanding of like how to run a business and how to, I could do the designing, I could do the building, but when it came to all of the other things, as far as accounting and taxes and like, all this stuff, like, super, I'd realized, wow, I don't know anything about this. And that's why I failed. So you know what? I'm going to learn a lot about that next.
Right. Well, and also that comes back to, in learning, we don't have to learn everything. There's going to be some things that you don't like, or you don't want to learn, or it's not worth your time to learn. So those are the times where it's, worth exploring. Should I just pay somebody to do this? Because I've done that too over the years, like trying to do it all. And then I'm spending too much of my time and energy on these things I don't really want to do. So I don't have the energy or the time left for the things that I do want to do. So there's that understanding of that balance of, this isn't worth me doing. I'm going to pay somebody to do this because I want to go over here and this is what lights me up. So this is what I want to continue to learn.
If I would have known that at that time, because the next phase of my development and failures was learning that, not to try to do it all, okay, now I have know a little bit about this, know a little bit about that, I can get all these things put together, and pretty well do the thing, but like, you can't do it all yourself.
Right.
It's there's a great proverb that we repeat all the time, actually at Thrive a lot, which is it's an African proverb. It's if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's as I think that says it all.
Yeah, I agree. Because it is easy to just be, and also feel like you have to do it all because, well, if I'm going to take this on, I should do it all. But that's just another lie, we tell ourselves, and then go back to, I know the truth, right? The truth is I don't have to do it all. I do better with others, right? I have more, there's more to go around, more energy to put on each part of it instead of trying to, personally extend your energy to all these areas that it just isn't humanly possible, and not even, again, not worth the time to do so.
Mm-hmm. I think absolutely. But a big question or a big learning that's a common thread throughout everything has been like, I've been kind of going through this reorienting process to learn, like, I've always been interested in like value, right? It's like the things that we do, we create value for other people. And a lot of our, let's say, institutional kind of legacy business models, are about extraction more than creation when it comes to value. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, am I creating, the value? One, I think when we do things that are intrinsically valuable, I think we feel that kind of on a fundamental level, that gives work meaning, right? When you know that you're creating value for other people. And it's one of those things where, I was doing architecture projects. I was doing, website designs, doing app designs, doing all these different things. And I kind of got really horizontal and just really spread thin, and I had to really come to terms with myself. Okay, where can I be the most effective? And what, and where do I feel that I can contribute the most value to others? And that helped me to really hone in on exactly like where I needed to go next.
Yeah. What was most important as well. And so let's talk about your current project, Thrive Lot. And as you said, from an architect, you brought buildings to life. And again, the show Create What You Speak, right? I feel like you're an excellent example of that with the way you've designed things with again, architecture, website, apps, and now you've moved into a project called Thrive Lot. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your journey there?
Absolutely. Maybe we'll start with the journey.
Okay.
Let's see. Taken back to UT. In undergrad, actually, had kind of rubbed shoulders with a guy, Justin West, who's now the CEO of Thrive Lot. And we kind of had some similar friend groups and similar social circles, and we would see each other at different events and so on. But it really wasn't until, I guess, 2019, I was working on a project called Seats Open at the time, which was activating third spaces, like, restaurants, coffee shops, places like that, and opening up that space for co-working. And so about that time, I realized that, I had no idea about like the whole marketing side of things. That was that learning for me, and started to pick his brain because he's just an incredible digital marketing like wizard and systems builder. But he started to kind of drip feed me this idea of Thrive Lot. And it had been with him for like 4 or 5 years at that point, right? And he's just been like researching and talking to people and like gathering. It's been his, that was his like thing that he was ready to bust out with at the right time, right? And started realizing that like we shared so many of the same interests and values when it came to, allowing people to rethink their relationship with the land, first of all. With the supply chain, with how we are dependent, like, if food were to go away, or, as I read just the other day, that fertilizer prices have increased 10 times, which could bode, not well at all for next year's harvest. And that's, right. At the very least, we might experience like huge price hikes, but that kind of, all of a sudden, I feel like we felt this in the pandemic. We go to the store, we don't see anything on the shelf that, we expect to be there. And it's like that magic is all of a sudden like, oh,
that's not a good feeling. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, what? Like, no, this is uncomfortable. I'm not used to this.
Right. And, and this is something that I'd kind of experienced. And also I was always very interested in architecture school and sustainable design, right? Like, how do we create something that's meant to last or meant to really do what it's supposed to do? And, we have all these vacancy issues. Why aren't we, preserving more, places, and also like, how are we impacting the land, and how are we, really trying to measure and see that improve over time, right? How are we to, decrease our footprint? And there are all these people, permaculture, ecological design, that are, out there trying to do this work, but really, are great systems designers, great at developing, perennial native pollinator food systems, but are really hard to find, and themselves don't like marketing, don't like selling things. And also, like, there's kind of this maybe, let's say, missing design component of translating like how to create an ecologically sustainable food forest on, a 0.25 acre property.
Right, on somebody's lot in a subdivision and, wherever.
Right, exactly, which is a totally rethought, apologies. Okay. I do have dogs and one cat.
Yeah, my dog sits by me. He's sometimes when somebody rings the doorbell, he gets a little crazy.
Let's see. So the realization, I guess, there was that we can use some of the technological, let's say, innovations like platforms, marketplaces, to enable, to give really a platform for these folks to do the really good work that they are doing, because there are measurable impacts on people, on food security, on water retention, on, the ability to reduce your own footprint, whether that be single-use plastics, all these different things that can feed into it that they're doing, but have no way of getting it out there. And, so the first step was really to create a marketplace where all the people, and believe it or not, we did not know at the time, like how many people out there were looking for this. We're looking to, not necessarily, I wouldn't call it homesteading, because it's not quite there. It's more just like, am I spending $5,000-$6,000 a year on my landscaping maintenance? Is doing that, doing anything for me? That's like very basic, but you can't eat grass, right? You can play in it and all these different things. But, when we think about our impact and we think about what we want to have available to us, it was really amazing to get those tests going, to start to see that interest, and then to really see that we were able to develop. Brought my brother in at the time. He was, it was very much just testing and seeing, right, and learning. Which I would also say that so much of the way that we've developed the business model of ThriveLot has been around this notion of autodidactism, because like we need to be self-learning such that, I don't know what all these amazing folks doing all this work necessarily need. I do a little bit because I've done it myself in design build projects, and I know the tools that are available to us, and I know what I like, and I've built some of them before. But we need to learn directly really fast, and then be able to create the technological and also to create like this incredible like digital immersive experience for the people that want this. So I'm sure a lot of people know how rife the contracting industry is with problems. Whether that be miscommunication, missed deadlines, a lack of good expectation setting, and so much of what we're set up to do is to make that go away. If we can figure out a way to automate a lot of the scheduling and booking, make sure that there's a clear process that everybody can follow, that we're going to hit this milestone and then that one and then that one. And this is exactly what you're getting. And this is what we're achieving here. And we're also actually going to stay right within your budget. And we're going to be really sensitive to that because we know, we've set that from the beginning. And it's
so ThriveLot is ThriveLot the app then that connects people to help find other people in their area that will help them build more sustainable landscape, even edible landscape. So people can have almost, instead of having your landscaping full of bushes that are just there for, to be there, this is more about creating actually plants that you can, it's like having a garden, but not necessarily the garden you would see overrun with all, that a little out of order, right? This is actually like landscaping gardening. Would that be a way to describe it?
Yeah. I mean, I think edible landscaping is a way we describe it sometimes. I think we are a technological platform that enables people that do the work to create these edible landscapes, to connect with the people that want them, and provide kind of this seamless process. Like, you go to Uber, you open up the app and you get a ride. Kind of, you want a project, we take in your, like, what is your vision? What are your preferences? How much food do you want? And help to educate going through that process too about, it's because you may want raised beds, for example, and you may want them over here, but unfortunately you only get 4 hours of sunlight there.
Right.
So we want to really be very sensitive, one, to like the sight, translate that, put that together with your vision. And then on the other side of that, create a really good experience.
Yeah, and have it be usable for, because I know we saw a lot of people in, 2020 create gardens at home, raised gardens, beds, or I did myself actually. And, but then I also saw people, well, this won't grow, or people just throwing some seeds down and expecting to have these like massive plants. Right. And, sometimes that works, but generally there's a lot of other things that need to go in. And if you don't understand soil, or you don't understand, like you're saying, sunlight, and how much you don't want to put something that needs partial shade in full sunlight all day, right? There's all these different things that go into it. But I think having that ability to grow your own food is such a empowering feeling, because it's not something, especially if you live in I live in the city, so I don't have a lot of yard space, but I do have some space. And even for me, having a small raised garden and being able to grow tomatoes, grow peppers, right? I had herbs, all this stuff. And it was a good feeling. I go outside, I pick it, good, I can eat this, right? This feels good to me. And that's something that we don't even hardly think about that anymore as an option, I think, because we're so used to going to the store and just buying it off the shelf. And there's such a difference in that quality and the taste, and when having something, go to the farmer's market and get something, your experience of eating that versus something dry and, discolored, not even colored properly from the store is going to be very, very different. But I think it's something we almost don't even think about anymore. So I love this concept. And this is why I wanted to talk about it on the show, because it's another idea that is outside of the box. This is not something that, again, most people think landscaping. They think just put in some bushes or whatever to, get some aesthetic going on here. But having this as a choice, being able to take control back in this way, really fix, two things, right? Have the space for the growing your own food, but then also have it be aesthetically pleasing when you're looking at your house. I love that ability to have that another area of control. And that's what I talk about a lot on the show, being able to change your perspective and have different ideas to bring freedom back to your own life. And having food in your yard is freedom to me.
Oh my gosh, hugely empowering. I think there's ongoing right now a food sovereignty movement, and it's about taking, back the ability to have a lot of diversity in your diet. It's like we as humans have narrowed down basically what we eat to about 9 different crops. And if you look back, thousands of years ago, it was like 6,000, different nuts and fruits and berries and like grasses and all these different things. And it's like, wow. And I mean, just in the process of creating ThriveLot, like all the things that I've learned, like one of the very first things I did, which I highly recommend as a book to read, is Gaia's Garden by Toby Hemingway. And Gaia's Garden. And
Gaia's Garden.
It's about how to create these self-sustaining systems with that decrease in maintenance on small residential properties, and how to deal with the presence of grass and all the other things that are potentially invasive or very hard to actually get out. Right? They want to creep back in, and it's a mindset shift too, in thinking of annuals versus perennials, right? So most of the crops that we eat are annuals, which means, every year we have to replant them, growing season, then we harvest them in the fall, then it's done. But, if you start to intermingle with the perennials, and there are plenty of perennials that are, as nutrient rich and otherwise, as most of the annuals that we're consuming. And once they get going, they take care of themselves. Jerusalem artichokes, great example, very tasty.
Yeah. And having I know for me, I have I do have the garden, but I have a CSA, community supported agriculture membership at the farmer's market. And, being able to have that variety of different things that I normally wouldn't have considered and I made something the other day with butternut squash that was so good. And that's not something I normally cook with, but thinking outside of the box like that, not only with the way you design, there's so many things here with freedom of, think about food, design options, something totally different, but then what that does to you health-wise, we talk about all that, but also just what it does to open up different options that we have forgotten about. I think that, or we don't even consider or think that maybe are even there, but there are so many, again, I speak from only my own experience. I know in my experience, I felt, we talked about earlier about being in that box, being cornered, and it isn't always so. There are things out there. And if there aren't things, develop it like you have, right? Create your own, whatever that is. Learn, try, get out there, do something. Now's the time. Now is the time. There's never been a better time.
Exactly. What do they say? The best time is always now, and the next best time is like, now. It's good.
Right. And I think that's important to remember. And I love this. Again, this concept is so many things. I know we could talk for a long time about this. But before we wrap up today, I want to just ask you just one other question. So, again, you've had such an interesting experience just over the years with the way you were brought up, your entrepreneurship, the way you've learned, self-taught in a lot of things, creating your own lifestyle. Those are all things that are very desirable ways of being, I think. And what would you offer to the listeners as one piece of advice that they could do today to become autodidacts in their own life?
Oh gosh, let's see. Well, simple equation for me, and this hopefully may inspire others, which is whatever you're curious in, find that curiosity. And then, I mentioned this, the value kind of, the thing, does it create value for people that you care about? Could it potentially create value? That's so much of the things I feel like, that when we get curious, like, okay, we'll go down the rabbit hole. But sometimes we'll come in on the other side and be really discouraged, really disillusioned with the process. And a lot of times that's just because the thing that we were after necessarily, we weren't really aligned with, or, understanding the value that we were trying to create to get there. Because I think we are all creative machines, basically. We just have forgotten at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And even though sometimes those journeys feel like failures, I found that I learn other things along the way that actually take me to the thing that I wanted, that I didn't know that I wanted when I started the journey. But if I hadn't started the journey, I never would have got there. So getting started sometimes is half of, finding out whatever that it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, my entire experience, I would say, from going to undergrad, thinking that I was going to go into biology, going into political science, really just loving that, thinking that I was maybe going to be like a lawyer, waking up and saying, that is not what I want to do at all. What I really love, I love to create things. I should go to architecture school. Yeah. Going from that, I don't want to be an architect, and then following this. And at a certain point, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what kind of track am I taking here? But at the same time, I wake up and I'm presented with an opportunity like ThriveLot, and realize, looking back, that all the things that you've done have been almost to prepare you and give you the main weird experiences and knowledge that you need to actually excel here. Right.
To be led to the thing that you want to do, that you didn't know you wanted to do when you got started. So absolutely. I think that's amazing. Again, I love your story. It's very inspiring. I think it's a great reminder for everyone, myself included, to go after what you're interested in. Just try it, right? Get curious. Like you're saying, you never know where it's going to lead you. So,
oh my gosh.
Daniel, I want to thank you for being on the show this week. Can you tell the listeners more about how they can find out more about you and ThriveLot?
Sure. ThriveLot is thrivelot.com, and at ThriveLot, ThriveLot, on all social media. So Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter, you can find me. On Instagram, you can find me. I'm not very active, mainly on Twitter, is Daniel H. Hodge, at Daniel H. Hodge.
Awesome. I'll link to all that in the show notes so the listeners can find it. So
awesome. Thank you.
Daniel, thanks again for being here this week. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
This was awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.